So we talked a bit about the methodology last time. The methodology's goal is simple: to talk about your approach to the text and why it's going to be useful for your argument. So don't forget the importance of topic sentences. Your methodology and literature review paragraphs will still have topic sentences at the start saying, I'm going to talk about Hélène Cixous's version of Écriture féminine now in my essay on Huxley's feminism, because it allows me to do X, Y, and Z for my argument. And then you go into the direct analysis of Cixous. But you always want to be focusing it on the notion of advancing your argument. Don't have a methodology just because I've asked you to do it or suggested you do it. Have a methodology because it allows you to solidify the key ideas for your essay. So, method. You'll do a few things in your methodology, and by doing them in your methodology, you don't have to do them in your introduction, and you don't have to do them randomly in the body of your essay, because your reader will know you're doing a methodology. You might even title it that way if you want, and that way your reader isn't going to be sitting there going, well, why aren't you analysing Orlando yet? I know why you're not analysing Orlando. It's because you're discussing the ideas you need to deploy in order to analyse Orlando. So define your terms with a good source. Consult my syllabus and the Nick's 7 Deadly Sins for some advice on how to do this. Don't define all the goddamn terms you're going to use, just define the most important and or controversial ones for your essay. Describe your approach to the text. Again, with some kind of source. So, if you're going to talk about class in the text, you, whoever you are, third-year undergraduate student from Lethbridge, are not qualified to talk about class. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. You're not really qualified to talk about anything because you're an undergrad, you're learning to do this. You need someone who is qualified to talk about it. So that's why this course has theory on it. So with source, so if you want to do class, do Marx. If you want to do sort of science and aesthetics and ethics, do Whitehead. And if you want to do subjectivity, psychology, consciousness and unconsciousness, do Freud. Now I know Freud's all mostly bullshit, but that doesn't matter because at the time that this course is talking about, the modernist epoch, Freud was new and exciting. Freud was seen as the next big thing. It was the first way of trying to understand humans as beings that have some kind of psychology. So that means it's hugely important for all of the essays you're going to write in this course, probably. I mean, there isn't a text in the whole of modernism that doesn't have subjectivity as like a really key part, probably. But certainly the text on this course. So if you are writing an essay and you can't talk about class and associated ideas such as feminism and racism, you can't talk about science and aesthetics and ethics, and you can't talk about psychology, you're writing the wrong damn essay. You've got plenty of theory on the course to help you with this. So describe your approach with a source, and then discuss what your approach is going to help you do vis-a-vis your argument and the most important claims you're going to make in the essay. That's it. That's your methodology. It's not that complex. Just try how to do it. I do not expect perfection. For a lot of you, this is going to be the first time you've ever tried to do this. But hopefully you can see, trying to manage this at the same time as writing your essay, just with standard body paragraphs, is very difficult. It can be done, but you have to be a very skilled writer. This takes skill out of the equation, significantly at least. All right. So that was methodology. Now let's talk about the literature review. The literature review is a lot more simple, but please bear in mind it's the same as every other damn paragraph, which is you need topic sentences. You're not just going to randomly talk about all the criticism on Woolf or Huxley. You're going to talk about criticism that you find useful for articulating your argument. And by that I mean you might be articulating the significance of your argument. Look how many critics agree with me. Or you might be talking about how some critics are wrong because they focused on the wrong things, or they focused on the right things but they haven't done the right sort of close analysis. If you can read passages or ideas from a novel closely and generate different results, robust results, you've got to be able to justify them. You can disagree with a critic, that's fine. Okay, so the first thing to say is when you select your evidence, make sure, with the critical evidence, make sure it comes from a decent sized pool. And that's why your Google foo has to be good. If you're always struggling to find, let's say I ask you to do 6 critical sources, if you're struggling to even find 6, you've got no control over whether the sources are good or not. But if you have a pool of 20 or 30 and you get it down to 6, you've been able to select based on not just how well the critics allow you to articulate your argument, but also whether the critics are any good or not. So use a big pool to start with. I know it's time consuming, but this is why I'm asking you to do it. This is an advanced course. I've supervised 2 Chinook summer research candidates at this university, and one of the most helpful parts of that is that I get a smart student to help me do the literature review for articles I'm writing, because doing the literature review is always the most time-consuming part of an article. But that's frequently because, I might read 60 or 70 articles in preparation for writing a 10,000 word journal piece. I'm not asking you to do that, but bear in mind, it's worthwhile, but it's going to take a bit of time. So invest a bit of time, account for it in your planning. So you need a big pool to start. Be judicious. You wouldn't believe the amount of terrible articles there are out there. I would say at least 40% of you watching this right now in your 3000 level class are better writers than a lot of the critics out there. I get emails all the time, unsolicited emails, asking me to submit my journal, like journal articles I haven't written yet, to journals because they're so desperate for people to publish. So, one of the ways you can be judicious is which database you use. The University of Lethbridge does not subscribe to Scholars Portal, unfortunately, which is probably the best one, but Project Muse is a good one. There are still terrible articles on Project Muse, but there are far fewer than JSTOR. JSTOR is a massive repository that's fairly indiscriminate. Project Muse has quite a lot of Ivy League journals on there, and the Ivy League journals tend to have a more robust peer review process. So Project Muse is good, JSTOR is good. When it comes to being judicious, having a big pool is a good one. So, sorry to get all quantitative on you for a moment, but if you're going to make an argument and you've decided to use criticism to support your argument. Let's say your argument is potentially quite controversial, or you know, for instance, that I'm probably not going to like it, but you want to do it anyway. If you're searching for criticism that supports your argument, and you come up with a pool of 20 articles that talk about similar ideas to you, but you can only find 2 or 3 critics from those 20 who agree with you, either you have hit upon a truly new understanding of how to approach the texts and the ideas at stake in your work, or your argument is wrong and you have chosen bad critics who are doing the same thing you are, which is probably using your ideology to lead your analysis. I get at least one of these every course I teach, more or less. An essay that is making an argument the student wants to make but isn't supported by the text. And because they find 2 or 3 critics that support them, they're like, oh well, I'm fine if I make this argument. The professor can't say anything. Actually, I can, because in order to make that argument, you've ignored 10s, 20s, 30s, maybe even hundreds of critics who disagree with you, and you've just cherry-picked 2 or 3 critics. So, use the big pool, be judicious, and you can be judicious by being careful with JSTOR. There's lots of great stuff on JSTOR, but it's very large. Maybe prioritizing Project Muse a little more, but also just use your common sense. If there are only 2 or 3 articles that agree with you, and lots of articles disagree with you, you've got a problem. And when it comes to how long your literature review is, that kind of comes down to how much theory you're doing, so how big your methodology is. Maybe because you've only got 12 pages, it might seem like a large space, but it's not. Because you've only got 12 pages, if you're doing quite a lot of theory, you might not have that much time to do criticism, so you might be doing the minimum required for the essay and not doing any more. But if your methodology is fairly straightforward, you don't find that the theory helps you that much, you might want to do more literature review. And especially if you're engaging in a controversial topic or a multifaceted topic, you might need more criticism to speak to the controversy appropriately. Golden rule, don't do anything unless you do it well. Or you might need to articulate certain interrelated facets of your argument and how critics have responded to those facets. So that might mean you need 3 paragraphs in your lit review. We're assuming a paragraph is never longer than a page, right? Yes, never longer than a page. So that is the literature review. And to finish, I want to do editing. So I've broken it out into its own section because editing is super important. And one thing that applies to editing and to creating the draft is you're not superhuman. So if you're faced with the blank page scenario and you're trying to just start the draft, start in the middle of your essay. I know I said you need a quick and dirty introduction to write your essay properly, but sometimes even that is hard to start with. So just start in the middle of the essay. Start doing a close reading of the most important moment from the novel that you want to talk about. And then you'll get something down on the page and that'll help get you going. Similarly, you're not superhuman, so don't try and write it all at once or in like 2 or 3 sittings. Try to get up, go for a walk, go for a drive, whatever. Have a shower, have a nap. Those are the kinds of things that stimulate your brain when you're away from the pressure of the page, to have insight into what you're actually trying to say. And this is super important for the editing process. So if you can, once you finish the draft, take a day or a few hours away. Let your draft sit in your unconscious, go and do other things, don't think about it, and then when you come back to editing it, you can read it with a clean, clear approach, and you can ask yourself, okay, did I actually do the thing I think I was doing in the essay? Is it actually clear? Because clarity is everything. I know, in the words of my brother, I use too many polysyllabic words. And I guess sometimes, hopefully, I sound kind of smart, but hopefully I'm smart because of my ideas, not the words. The words sometimes allow me to be more accurate with explaining my ideas, but long words do not equal a smart person. We all know people who are dumb and use long words, right? So clarity is everything, and sometimes simplicity of grammar, simplicity of sentence construction can really help you. So in your editing process, please focus on clarity above all else. Clarity of language, clarity of grammar, but also clarity of structure. So here's what I want you to focus on most of all in the editing process: your introduction and your topic sentences. Again, please consult my syllabus and the 7 deadly sins for some more tips on doing this and also what not to do. Don't let me leave your introduction without knowing what your argument is and why it's significant for understanding the text better. Don't leave that significance part out, please. And with the topic sentences, remember, 1 or 2 sentences at the start of each paragraph is the topic sentence. And that is where you say where you're going to go in that paragraph and how it's going to help you develop your argument. You're looking for an argument that develops as it goes through. So the topic sentences tell me explicitly what that is. If ever a paragraph starts without you actively, explicitly saying what you're trying to do in that paragraph and why it matters, I'm already on the back foot as a reader. I'm reading this paragraph and I'm like, what is the purpose of this? I don't know. And I have to do the detective work. And most of the time there is a purpose. There are many great undergraduates I've worked with in the past who have been amazing writers and got high A's, even A pluses, with frequently crappy topic sentences. So there clearly was a point to the paragraph. But if I have to work it out halfway through, that makes you sound less smart, right? And I have to suspect maybe you don't fully understand the point of the paragraph. It's there, like your giant brain has worked it out and laid it out, but part of the process has been unconscious. The topic sentence, if you're a really great writer, you could do it straight out in the drafting phase, but really the topic sentence achieves its sort of full expression in the editing phase. That's why it's so important to give yourself time for editing. So yeah, take some time away. That allows you to think, okay, what is the point of my essay? Now I can work better on my intro. And take some breaks while you're editing. If you've got a particularly problematic paragraph, you might not fully understand what the point is. Take a bit of time away. Just think about, okay, if I had to explain the point of this paragraph to my mum or my best friend, what would I say? And then make that your topic sentence. If you can't do that, if you can't articulate what your paragraph is doing and why it's doing it in the context of your argument, your paragraph might not have a point, okay? You might have to delete it. And this is why the drafting process is so important. You're going to delete some